It was originally Corey Allen who was thinking, who directed Farpoint. Kept on saying to me, no, I want them really hard. I want them, really like that. And I kept on going, Corey, if you do it that way, if I do it that way, the audience will turn off because they will create a trajectory that they can anticipate. Whatever happens, this Q character will always be hard, and it makes me two-dimensional. And I think that there's so much more in this. There could be sort of amusing, it could be heartfelt, it could be vicious, it could be all sorts of things, so that the audience is never sure of what's going to happen next, and therefore the character will become more interesting.
John de Lancie talking about the origins and his take on Q, the quintessential character on Star Trek The Next Generation, and even Picard. Even the Star Trek character that uttered the word flotsam as well. This is Exploring Humanity through Sci-Fi. This rebrand continues my mission to get a better understanding of ourselves through sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and comics as our mode of exploration. Have you ever been to a Comic-Con or a convention and waited in line and take pictures with your favorite star or writer, only just to get a signature and no personalization? Not to mention the price of the airfare, the hotel, and the con themselves. John de Lancie's son Owen has a company called fanfaresignatures.com that gets autographed pictures virtually. There's more with John de Lancie, so stay tuned. Fanfare has virtual signings on exclusive art with your favorite star and even athletes. We chat about this plus his audio work, the beginnings of Q in The Next Generation, and how he fared in Picard. John de Lancie. I'm going to talk about Fanfare Signatures. It's actually a company your son developed, and it was actually one of the things that happened during COVID. It was like, people weren't getting signatures and there were no conventions. So he came up with a really great idea. So, that was pretty neat. So how did that, well, you obviously are related, but did he approach you about this too, or how did that work?
Well, he did. And in the usual, fashion of the old stick in the mud dad, I said, oh, people aren't interested. No, that won't work and stuff like that. I mean, it came out of this, and that is that during COVID, people, he's the one who my son Owen helped me set up a website and all that type of stuff. And he would be fielding most of the letters and things like that, and things that he saw that I should see, he would send them on and I would address them. But he was seeing a lot of things saying, oh, wow, what are we going to do now that, COVID? And COVID lasted for quite a while. We forget how quickly we forget that, getting food delivered from the grocery store, or I'll rush in and I'll, wash myself in Clorox and stuff like that. Okay. From that, he got this idea. And the idea is that, gee, these are people who would like these autographs and signatures, and I can provide that because he already had a company that was manufacturing in 30 different sites around the world, all of his maps and things like that. He said, I could provide that. I, at that point, said, oh, no, I don't think people would be interested. Well, he said, Dad, can I just show you. Let's see. And within about a couple of months, having done all the work and created new artwork and stuff like that, because he's a designer, he sent it out without me even knowing about it. And then he said, by the way, about 3 weeks ago, I sent out these things and you've gotten this amount of response. And I was like, oh, wow. So he said, do you think that there will be others of your friends who would be interested? And I said, sure. So I talked to Armin and Bob Picardo and Kate Mulgrew. And, I talked to all these people and they said, sure. One of the things that's really sort of nice about it is that it also, there are a lot of people, obviously there are the people who come to the conventions. But there are many people who are writing him saying, this is wonderful. I'm not somebody who either can afford to come to a convention, because when you think about it, oftentimes it's an airplane flight, a hotel, the convention itself, on and on. Or they're in locations that are so far away that he will get responses, Owen will get letters saying, this gives me an opportunity to participate without all of the brouhaha that goes into having to actually be there on site. What makes these also a little different, and that is that I will get on my iPad, I will get, coming from Owen, Bob would like you to say, the trial never ends on this poster. And then Bob will also write, this is the fan, this is for, and this happened just a couple days ago. This is for my 91-year-old dad, who was a Trek fan all the way through, and was a whatever he was. He was a principal of a school. So the trial never ends will really mean a lot to him. So so I will be able to write, Bob, the trial never ends, and thanks for having been the principal of a school for so many years and helping the kids. So, and then it's sent out. So it's become, it's an idea that really works. And now it's for people to find out about it.
No, it's great. And the fact that you could sign it digitally, and the cool thing is the signatures are not going to smudge or anything like that, like they would if you signed a photo. So that's really cool.
It is. Digital has a little bit of a negative context, because one is sort of under the impression that one just stamps out, I write my name once and it's just the same all the way. So what we're saying is that they are virtual. And in point of fact, I write to that person. Each person I write to is to that person. And somebody at a convention actually brought me one of the posters. They said, oh, we just wanted to show you this. And I was very interested in looking at the signature, in looking at it. And I went, oh, isn't this interesting? My signature and what I have written is bolder and better scribed than what I'm doing here in front of you with my Sharpie that's not working quite as well, and all that type of stuff. So I was very impressed with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's really cool. And the artwork is phenomenal. The Q poster is great because it has like all the different literations that we've seen throughout the years that he's played, that you played. And it's really a neat idea. And the people you've gotten on board, you mentioned Bob Picardo, Nana Visitor signed something as well. And
yes, and also gosh, now the name just escaped me.
Let's see.
The science guy.
Bill Nye.
Bill.
Yeah, Bill Nye, yeah.
Bill Nye is doing them, and he's also. I mean, now other companies are beginning to see. Oh, this would be really helpful for us. This is a good way to do it, and also, when you order, you can order. I don't know what the sizes are. An 8x10 or a 12 by whatever, but you can order different sizes. And one of the things in which Owen and his partner, his wife, they went to architecture school. They're designers. The quality of things is important to them. And one of the things in which I was particularly taken by was the quality of the paper. And I talked to Owen about it, and he said, look, you can choose all sorts of different levels. And our feeling was this: if you get a small one, why would you get a lesser level of paper than if you got the best one, the biggest one? So we just decided on things that had to do with, or he said, I decided that all the paper would be the best. It would be the, acid-free museum quality paper. The same thing with the glass, the acrylic that's put on. It's the UV acrylic. How long it takes. And I just found out this yesterday. He said, for us, it takes about 5 days from the time in which we end up getting the order. It takes about 5 days because it just depends on where in the world it's going to be sent. If it's going to be sent to, Southeast Asia, it's printed in Singapore. But it's done very, in England or for the EU. Well, the EU, they're not part of the EU anymore. But in any case, it's done in England for all of that. In the United States, there are a couple of different places. And he said, our biggest wait time has to do with the actors. Some of them get the order and they go, oh, I'll take care of this right away. And others are going, oh my gosh, I've got to, learn lines and I have to shoot. And so that might take 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days. But he says, once we get the order fulfilled, once they've signed the order, the signature has been done, it takes us about 5 days. And then that person has a framed, glass covered, mounted or matted poster with our signatures on it.
Yeah, I mean and I just saw that coming up on the website. NFL players are going to be signing those. Exactly.
That's
nice.
More and more people. And, there was somebody who said, I forget it. I think it was a sports guy who said to him, we do charities, but the charities can be sort of mobbed if we're doing them in person. This is a way for us to do them virtually for everybody to get what they want and not to have it a mob scene. So we're really, really happy with that, with this new way of getting something out. And again, when I'm at a convention, I usually don't have time to do, what's your name? Bill, John de Lancie. Well, that's it, because I've got somebody behind. Here, you can take the time to say whatever the person, happy birthday for my, 40th birthday, or, to my best friend on his 40th. You have time to do that.
There's also a second picture from that iconic moment in Encounter at Farpoint where Picard is on trial and, Q is on that throne and you
right.
settled down. So that's a nice one too. I love the one with the doctor. Cork's Bar has one that's really neat. It's just beautifully imagined, and I think fans will appreciate it. I mean, not everybody can get to conventions because they ain't getting any cheaper. That's for sure.
No, they're not. And we are still a little leery of that many people there.
Yeah.
they're at the end of a convention. The regular group, we'll do maybe 6 or 7 a year. This allows us to do just, if you're not at those 6 or 7, that's sort of it.
Yeah.
Also, after 2 or 3 days later, sometimes we'll hear, Brent got COVID, or
wow.
so and so got COVID. Oh my God! And we'd be back in, wearing masks again, and so this. As I said, as I started all this, the dad stick in the mud. Oh no, like that. I was completely wrong.
Yeah, well, it's really a nice alternative for people. In addition to going to conventions and things, people will always go. But it's I don't feel totally. It's better, but I don't feel totally safe going these days to cover it.
Where are you located?
I'm outside of Charleston, South Carolina, in Mount Pleasant.
Okay, nice.
Just really moved here.
Yeah.
So I talked to Jonathan, and he shot North and South here, this miniseries, and that's where I think he met Jeannie when he was shooting that. So
okay,
that's kind of interesting.
Nice. Jonathan is on. Jonathan.
Yes.
Owen did a kind of what was it? Sort of a 007 version of Jonathan. Yeah.
I'll be talking to him next week, as a matter of fact.
You should ask him about it then.
I will.
Yeah.
There's more Trek Tuesday, so stay tuned.
If we can talk Star Trek for a moment, I wanted to ask you, did Gene Roddenberry ever convey to you, or what was his fascination with these omnipotent beings like Trelane in the original series, and then the epitome, I think, is Q? So did he ever talk to you about that?
No, he didn't. As a matter of fact, he and I had a couple of lunches, and what we talked about almost exclusively was airplanes. I had written a script about a bunch of young boys in a private school, kind of a rundown private school for wayward kids, who had put together a Pete and Pole aircraft, and it was called the Pete and Pole Air Camper, and for $500. In 1925, $500 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
You could buy, they would send you the kit. You had to supply the Model A engine, and you had now an airplane. And so we talked quite a bit about it. I didn't know anything about Trelane. I had not watched the television series. I was a kid who who had a lot of problems in school, academic problems.
Yeah, I hear you there.
And I had a reading issue and all that type of stuff. And so my parents simply turned off the television. I mean, they cut the cord on the TV.
Wow.
And so I never really watched any of that. And so it was only after maybe 2 or 3 years after doing Trek that somebody said that I was asked about Trelane. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so they sent me a video, and I watched it, and I went, oh, very interesting. Very interesting. The energy, there's sort of the sameness in the energy and what have you. The Gene that they originally wanted, Gene originally wanted to go immediately to series. And he did not want a movie of the week, but they insisted on a movie of the week. So if you take a look at Farpoint, you can see a very clear seam where he put 2 stories together. I mean, it's not, I dare say it's not a particularly elegant scene. I mean, the intertwining of the stories is not, if you were writing it from the start, I don't think you would have kind of put it together that way, just in terms of storytelling. So you can just see that there were two stories mashed together. And mine was the second story, which was done in a much more hurried way. And I think that what Gene probably did is think back in his head about, characters that had worked in the past, and whether he consciously chose to do a spin-off of Trelane or not. I do know that there was a woman by the name of Janet Quatrain, who showed me in Scotland, who showed me a postcard or a letter, I can't remember, from Gene saying, I'm sitting down to write, the 2-hour version of, for TNG, and I'm naming a character after you. And it was Q.
Yes. Oh, that's really wild. I got to ask you, the reaction of people at the end of season 3 of the recent Star Trek Picard, when Q really, I guess he expressed some kind of love for Picard. What was the reaction you got from after that episode aired?
Well, a lot of people said to me, actually, it was Terry Metalis who texted me. He said, you have a lot of people crying tonight. You don't go into a scene to do that, or at least I don't. If you do that, you can be pretty sure that people won't have that type of reaction. I thought it was a really well written scene. It was sort of, we had started together, 30 some years ago, facing off that trial. And here we were, two older guys, still as characters, seated in this wonderful set, this sort of dilapidated kind of sunroom where the vines had grown and stuff like that. You could see time had passed, having this final conversation. And it was, it had a lot of emotional potential. If you can't play it that way, yeah, but you have to recognize that it does. So, when I say, you matter to me, I thought that sort of pulled together really the arc all the way through. It was originally Corey Allen who was thinking, who directed Farpoint, kept on saying to me, no, I want him really hard. I want him, really like that. And I kept on going, Corey, if you do it that way, if I do it that way, the audience will turn off, because they will end up, they will create a trajectory that they can anticipate. Whatever happens, this Q character will always be hard, and it makes me two-dimensional. And I think that there's so much more in this. There could be sort of amusing, it could be heartfelt, it could be vicious, it could be all sorts of things, so that the audience is never sure of what's going to happen next, and therefore the character will become more interesting. So while he and I sort of butted heads about it, nothing big deal, but we had a different opinion. When they brought me back the second time, at that point, the directors in episodic, not MOW, which gives you more time, but the director in an episodic environment doesn't have as much control of the actors. They can say, faster and funnier and what have you, but there's not much more that they can do. So at that point, I was truly able to start fragmenting. So, and I think that helped to create the popularity of this character and so when we got to that end scene on Picard, it was all of those things. It's, I've had your back, but this has been hard. This has been hard, but I've been pushing you. But understand, I've always liked you.
Yeah, that was a great scene. And the appeal for me, and I because I'm a fan as well, is the unpredictability of Q. It's like, what is he going to do this time?
Yeah.
With the mariachi band. I mean, it was just the Robin Hood thing. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was like always a new thing. And then even on Voyager, that was neat too. You could have brought him home, but that's not the way it was supposed to be. I also got to ask you your reaction when the first time we see Q, and he is the Q we remember, the younger Q, and it's obviously you, but with the de-aging technology, what was that like to see it? And then I love it. You go, let me catch up. That was like perfect.
Yeah. Well, that was originally not going to be there. Those little pops are very expensive.
Yeah.
So I had said to Terry, listen, I have a way that if I can suggest, if you shoot just my shoulder onto Patrick, I forget actually exactly how the sequence works, but there was a line that I said for which I added, with their permission, that I see him. You don't see me yet. I see him. He sees me. And I go, oh, dear, you're a lot older than I thought or expected. Let me fix that.
Oh.
It would give us that opportunity to then, when you come on me, it would explain that in that moment of that turnaround, I have aged myself to be his age.
Oh.
They said, yes, let's do that. So then we shot it that way. And then they did add on top of it the shot of me young, which only improved the transition. So there was that. And then I guess when I saw that shot, I went, well, time flies.
God,
Time flies. Well, yeah. So.
Well, I hope Legacy happens because I know it was rushed. It was a rush scene, and Terry called you in at the last minute to do it. But having Q appear with Jack Crusher, that has a lot of story potential as well. So I hope that Legacy happens eventually down the road.
Yeah, I was not at the screening of it, but I'm told that at the live screening where, there was a theater, I think it was the Egyptian or one of the theaters in Hollywood, that, that had a lot of people in it. And then when that came out, because they weren't expecting that at all, and then there's the crawl, and then all of a sudden the scene, and apparently the audience went, yeah! So that was fun. I wish I had been there for that.
Yeah. It has a lot of story potential, and it's yet another next generation. It looks like. So I appreciated that.
Yes.
Last season was amazing. Just really an amazing season.
Truly. And, but, this is in the hands of the gods now. So
it is. And lastly, before we go, what was it like when you did the audio versions of books? You did one with Leonard Nimoy. Obviously, he's no longer with us. And did you actually record together? Did you see each other during the process?
Oh, yeah. Yes. That came about. I was directing War of the Worlds.
Yes.
And at the end of War of the Worlds, I had this idea already. At the end of War of the Worlds, I went to Leonard and I said, have you enjoyed this experience? It was about a 10-day experience. He said, oh, I've had a great time. And I said, well, I have an idea that I'd like to talk to you about. He said, why don't you come to my office? So a couple of days later, I went to his office and I said, I would like to do adaptations of classic science fiction. I'd like to do them in such a way that they are recognizable by the if the author were still alive, they'd go, oh, that's the show I wrote. I had a big issue about that, and that is that the first book that I read from cover to cover, I was maybe about 12, so I was reading late, was Jules Verne's Mysterious Island.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved that book, and I wanted to become like those guys, people who knew things and could create out of nothing. And I was very impressed by the whole thing. And out comes the movie. Whenever it came out, coincidentally, a few months after I had read the book. And I was so delighted to go to that movie. So as a kid, I'm going to the matinee, and the movie starts, and there's the balloon and the escape and all that. And I go, oh, this is great, and then the landing on the island, and then a few minutes later, I go, dinosaurs? There are no dinosaurs. And of course, all they were actually lizards that they shot fighting. But I went, what is this? Well, there's no dinosaurs. And then, a few minutes after that, somebody spots a raft. And I dare say, I'll put it this way, two very blousy women show up, get off the raft. I am apoplectic. I am apoplectic. So as you can imagine, it's like a 1:00 matinee, and I am standing up in a full house of other 10 and 12-year-old kids going, this is not the movie. This is not the story. This is not the story. I got collared and thrown out.
Oh,
yeah. So it was really important to me that we do these. So he said, listen, I think that's a great idea. And, because Leonard was the 800-pound gorilla, all he had to do was call up Simon & Schuster and said, I have an idea. And they went, oh, great. So I began to write the scripts with a writer called Nat Sigaloff. And I forget which one we started with, but we did Time Machine and Journey to the Center of the Earth, and Lost World and First Men in the Moon, and then as the idea developed, we went to New Line to create a show for New Line, and then we went to the Sci-Fi Channel and we did them for Sci-Fi Channel, and that was very interesting because talking again, if it had just been me, they would have thrown me out of the office. But it's Leonard and me, and so we're saying we'd like to do a show for you, Sci-Fi Channel, and they go, okay, so well, what is it? Well, First Men in the Moon. Oh, that sounds very interesting. How would you do it? Well, imagine that it's on a stage of a theater. And they're like, what? And there are microphones. And actors are holding the scripts, and there are Foley artists. Well, by this time, their eyes are rolling to the back of their heads. and there are musicians on stage and stuff like that. Well, to their credit, they decided, okay, well, let's try it. We'll try one. So Leonard and I rented out the Olympia Theater here in Los Angeles, filled it up with 1,700 fans, and we did that. And the suits were sitting there, right, the best seats in the house, and right in the orchestra section there, and with their arms folded. And within moments, the audience is just like, "Oh, this is great!" And the audience is really responding, and they're looking around, and they ended up going, "Well, we didn't get it, but now we get it, and let's do a bunch more." So we did a bunch more for them. So that was all great. And so all of those things, we also went into the recording studio to do all of the actual Simon and Schuster tapes, and then we did a lot of post on all of those. So we were working very closely.
That's great. That's great. Great story. And all those books were influences of mine when I was a kid. Got me into science fiction. Started with War of the Worlds. So congratulations and keeping those things still out there. So
I talked to somebody yesterday. I'm writing a piece. I'm bringing in the Curtis Institute of Music. They're a very, very famous music school. Have been around for 100 years. They only have 150 students who go there at any one time. It's completely free. Leonard Bernstein went there, and Sam Barber and Nina Rota and many of the major orchestral players in the United States, and I went there and also. So I'm writing a show for them or two shows for them, and one of them has a lot of new music that's being written by a composer who's a Star Trek fan. He wrote when I went on tour with them, which is when I got the idea. When I went on tour with them, with Stravinsky's the Soldier's Tale, in the second half of the program, I meet this the composer Nick DiBardino. He said, because you were in the second half of the program, I'm a big Star Trek fan, and I wrote. He didn't even say Star Trek at the time. He said, because you're in the second half of the program, I wrote a new piece for the first half of the program. I said, oh, great. That's wonderful. He said, it's called Darmok and Jalad. And I have no idea what he was talking about. I said, and he could see that look on my face, and he goes, "Oh, it's a Star Trek episode." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. It sounds like some sort of gelato flavor, something like a dessert." And so I listened to it that opening night, and I went, "Oh, this is great. This is wonderful." And quite frankly, far more interesting than the episode itself, which I hurried off to watch. And so he's written a bunch of them. And one of the things in which he said to me yesterday, which I thought was really good, he said, I started watching Star Trek Next Generation when I was about 8 years old. He said, I wanted to be an astronaut at the time. So all of this, and I was very nerdy, and I loved, the whatever, all the stuff on Star Trek, whatever, the beam that does this and, something. He said, but I was mostly struck by the optimism of the show, that the future would be better. And so here it is, this many years later. He was inspired by this show and is a world-class composer now, who has been inspired and is writing music inspired by Star Trek.
Oh, it's amazing. Fanfaresignatures.com. Great place to start. You'll see some of the artwork and the signatures there. If you're a fan, I highly recommend it. The artwork is super and sometimes funny, but you'll get the joke, especially if you're a Star Trek fan.
Absolutely. Thank you.
John de Lancie. It's
Thank
been an
you.
absolute pleasure and some great reminiscences. And I think you still got a lot of work ahead of you, no doubt about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
On my show notes, look for the link for fanfaresignatures.com. My Black Friday special is running until December 31st. Available now, 2 episodes of Paranormal, The Best of Time Capsule, The Walking Dead Chronicles, and much more. And with each podcast episode, there's bonus videos, including trailers, my Behind the Curtain video series, now featuring Predator Badlands with clips and interviews, plus featurettes on Wicked for Good and the new movie Mercy. Take advantage of my Black Friday special now, only 99 cents a month, and save 17% on the yearly plan. Easy to enroll, just click on the link in the show notes today. This is Tony Tellado.